Yo, 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 and welcome back to the Banter Boys podcast. My name is Sanji. With me is Patrick. How you doing, boy?
Very good, boy. Very good to see you again, Sanji, and good to hear you. How are things?
Not too bad. I must say good morning to you, Patrick, given where you are at the moment. I truly appreciate the efforts.
Right. I'm obviously here in Japan. When we did this at the same time last year, I think it was, a 5 a.m. start or something like that. I managed to push you to a 6 a.m. start, so you've given me an extra hour there. Very generous of you.
I would have given you even more sleep if you wanted it, to be honest. But you suggested a time, I took it. I'm just so happy that we're able to record. I know you submitted a recording mid-season last time because we didn't get a chance to chat live, but hopefully that will change for the upcoming season. But before we, drop the spoilers, I think let's do a fan introduction. Tell us your name, your Twitter handle, the club that you're representing this evening, where you're from, and a little bit about what you do.
Of course. Yep. So I'm Patrick, Zippy Patrick on Twitter. I'm representing Bournemouth, although I must admit I do have some allegiance to Manchester United as well. But Bournemouth, for the purposes of the podcast, that's where I'm from. I always grew up there. Based in Japan, as I know a number of your listeners are, which is cool. I think that's always quite a cool thing. Definitely got a circle of fancy football players based here in Japan, which is great. It's a really good way to keep us kind of in touch and keep us sane when things are getting a bit mad here. Other questions? What do I do? I'm in the English teaching realm, I would say, and that's fun. That's always quite an entertaining thing to do. Yeah, things are good with me, man. Very much the same as last year.
Excellent. And how did you enjoy your summer? Did you have a bit of a break from all the fantasy sports?
Oh, it's been great. Yeah, it's good to get away from them once in a while. The season was up and down in terms of watching football last year. Fantasy, relatively successful last year. I got a mid-table finish, if you can call that successful. I know you've probably got very high expectations, so anything other than lifting the trophy is a disgrace. But no, I think I got a fifth place finish in a league of 10. A league of 5 would have been bad, but in the league of 10. I avoided relegation, which is always nice.
That's always a plus.
Two-tier system, so it's good. Yes, but I'm ready to go. We did our draft a couple of weeks back. Okay, quite happy with how things turned out.
Excellent.
I don't know if we're going to have time to touch on that later.
We can touch on it right now if you want. Which pick did you have? Would you mention, a couple of picks that your top, 2-3 picks, and did you find any gems in your draft later on, you think?
I think so, yeah. I had a couple of punts, which, especially now with a few transfer updates here and there, I think they've turned out quite well. So I was in the 6th pick, which is not one of my favourites because you're kind of right in the middle of the pack there. You've got to wait for it to go one way and then come all the way back. Yeah. I don't mind. In the past, I've had 9 or 10, something like that, and then you can get the kind of 2 picks in quick succession. I always like that. But managed to get Foden at 6, again, with that slight United allegiance. I'm not a big fan of Foden, but I think he makes sense. Player of the season, obviously, last year too. Madison at number 2. Yeah. I managed to get a Japanese trifecta in there. Mitoma, Sugawara and Kamada.
Yeah, lovely.
That feels really good.
I feel like you win the league just because of that.
I hope so. Well, fingers crossed on that. Kamada's one to watch out for, but a couple of the late round ones. Fabio Carvalho of Liverpool, he's now gone to Brentford all of a sudden, so I feel like his value has probably picked up quite a bit. Got him in round 15, which I'm pretty happy with. If I could just pick one more out, Xerxes and Diallo, I think, from United. I managed to get them in 9 and 10. Diallo's one to watch.
Yeah. Any Bournemouth players by any chance?
Not yet, but that's likely to change at some point. As we may discuss a little bit later, there's a big gaping hole at the centre forward space, and they're kind of bidding here, there, and everywhere. So they're trying to bring someone in that position. If they bring in a new, a good star player there, I'll drop a lot of budget on them, shall I?
Awesome. All right. Well, I think why don't we get started? Listeners, welcome back to yet another Inside Trax episode. We're here to chat everything Cherries, everything Bournemouth. Quick breakdown for how these episodes usually go. We've got 3 main segments. The first segment is a bit of a general discussion where we talk about the impact of any managerial changes, coaching changes. We look back at the club's previous season's performance, and then we will also, ask Patrick what his new season's expectations are, while we discuss the old system versus the new system. So basically the impact of transfers in and out of the club as far back as last summer. And then we'll also pick Patrick's brain to get an idea of what the expected formation and possible starting 11 will be for the upcoming 24-25 campaign. And then in our second segment, obviously we're going to chat some fan tracks. We're going to get Patrick's first pick from Bournemouth, his next 3 picks, which rounds he would suggest to take them in, at least one hidden gem, and a new addition that we've added is a trap asset as well. And then in our final segment, we'll get some generic advice in terms of how he, runs things as an experienced Fantrax manager. Does he have some tricks up his sleeve when it comes to doing his waiver claims? What is his experience with using Fab, and some of his best and worst trades from last season as well. All right, let's get started. So, I would say a fairly successful season under Iraola. You guys finished 12th. You scored 54 goals, conceded 67. In the top part of the second half of the table, but I'm pretty sure it felt like at one point, once the system actually clicked under Iraola, it felt like you guys were basically like a top 6 team last season. So it's kind of hard to just judge you guys based on, what the final position was. But I mean, other than Iraola saying, was there any other changes at the club, coaching wise or hierarchy that, what you think might be something managers should be aware of?
That's an interesting one. Well, as you said, the system took a while to bed in for sure. It was a very slow start. And I know some pundits were saying we were a shoo-in for relegation at one point.
Yeah.
And we definitely tailed off at the end of the season. But I'm trying to remember when it was. I think it was around the winter break. I remember I went back to England from Japan and watched the game on TV. And it was the game at Old Trafford. And I think it was 3-0. It was 3-0 to Bournemouth.
Yeah.
They just played United off the park that day. So when it clicks, it's very good. It's very attractive football, and it's very good to watch. I think I was looking at my notes from last year, and I wrote down that it's Iraola is he was labelled as a Klopp light.
Yeah.
It's kind of a heavy metal football, a lighter version of that. I don't know if that ever came to pass exactly, but there was some really good stuff, and especially watching, Bournemouth first and then United tended to have the late kickoff afterwards. Bournemouth easily played the better football, I would say, a lot easier on the eye. That said, no Solanke this year, so that's a concern. We're going to touch on that later, though.
Yeah, I think Klopp Light is fairly accurate because you guys did definitely have an attractive, forward-thinking style of football. And yeah, I mean, it took a while to click because I think in the first 11 fixtures, there was only one victory and it was versus Burnley. And I think there were 3 draws in there. The rest were losses. So definitely, yeah, I understand why people were giving you a hard time with respect to, possibly being relegated. But then after that, I want to say from game week 12 until game week 19, there was 1 draw and the rest were wins, right? You guys were absolutely flying around then. And then obviously, things will kind of even out. Then, there were some losses, some draws. There were a series of wins as well, from game week 27 to 31. And then, like you said, it kind of just tailed off towards the end or whatnot. Yeah, I think it was very promising signs to see, Iraola's philosophy being implemented. But like you said, it's a massive now question mark, right? Your main talisman is gone, your penalty taker off to Spurs. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how our discussion kind of unfolds, to see, the assets or gems or traps that, we'll identify from Bournemouth. So I think maybe now is kind of a good point to look at some of the ins and outs at Bournemouth as far back as last summer. And let's just kind of touch on, the impact that these players would have had on your team. So in terms of transfers out, as far back as last summer, I don't think there was anyone that was of significance that, was great during, let's say, even the 22-23 season that made an impact. So let's maybe focus on some of the ins, right? One player that came in last summer that I genuinely thought would have made an impact just because of how well he scores ghost points was Hamed Traore. What happened to him last season, really?
He seems to have been a bit of a ghost. I'm not sure exactly what it was. There were some injuries here and there, perhaps just not being in the manager's plans that much for whatever reason. I believe, as far as I know, he's still at the club, is he not?
I believe, from what I understand, I believe so. That is the case. Yeah.
I couldn't, as much as I'd like to, I just couldn't recommend him in terms of fantasy. He's just not in the team, right?
Yeah. It's kind of crazy that he's not. So okay, another name. Let's talk about Milos Kerkez, coming in from AZ Alkmaar. I thought he was decent on his debut season.
Yep. In terms of fantasy football, again, I don't know that he brought that many points in, but he was linked quite recently with a move to United earlier in the summer. I don't think that's going to come to pass, but he's an exciting player. I'd like to see him get more goals and assists. I know, according to my notes last year, I think he got 5 goals, 7 assists, or something like that for Alkmaar at that time. Very up and down. He never stops moving. He's a very modern fullback, I would say. Maybe lacking a little bit in quality, but he's a very tenacious player. Definitely a fan's favourite at Bournemouth, and I think they should enjoy him while they still have him. He's likely to move on at some point.
So, next name, Alex Scott, coming in from Bristol City. There was a lot of hype around him, comparisons to Grealish, etc. He had his moments, but I thought he lacked consistent playing time.
Due to injuries, I would say in large part.
Definitely.
And it seems conditioning to some point, just match fitness. He was kind of a little bit off on that, but the Guernsey Grealish is what he's known as. I would expect him to have a bigger role this year, for sure. I'd like to see him nail down a starting spot. There were just a couple of glimpses where he played everybody off the park. He was excellent on a couple of occasions, but again, you want to see that more often. You want to see him kind of control games there and drive Bournemouth on, especially with a bit more freedom now. I hope he's going to have a big impact this year.
Yeah, hopefully. So next name, Max Aarons, came in from Norwich City. What happened to Max? I feel like did he even play at the club last season? I don't remember him playing much.
He was there at right back for a while. Yeah, towards the latter half of the season, he was playing. Okay. Adam Smith still continues to just never die. He's the man who never dies.
Mr. Bournemouth, I want to say, really.
Yeah, for sure. He's getting on a bit, but still at the club. I was checking the lineups in pre-season, and it's kind of between the two of them for that right back spot.
Okay.
Although, I mean, that may change.
Yeah.
There was a signing yesterday, which we can touch on when you move to the incomings, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Another name from last summer, Justin Kluivert. I mean, obviously this is a big household name. I thought he looks good on the eye, but it was one of those sort of situations I thought never actually converted into Fantrax points. He wasn't a great ghoster. He was very return dependent.
Yeah, I'd like to see the figures. I reckon he's probably Bournemouth's second top goal scorer. Like he got a few goals there. There were a couple of streaky patches where he would find the net, but yeah, he maybe didn't kick on as much as we would have hoped. But he did lock down a place in the starting lineup by the end of the season, which didn't look likely early on. So that's a good thing. And it's obviously a permanent transfer. So I think up to now he's been the kind of player that's moved on every couple of seasons just to find a new club. But he seems to have found his feet pretty well at Bournemouth. Again, the system will change slightly without Solanke there. You never know. Maybe he'll be given a more prominent role in the team. So you never know. There's other players I would pick ahead of Kluivert right now, but he's worth checking out.
Well, I heard from like a friend or like a random footy chat group that is Kluivert taking penalties at the moment?
We had a penalty in the first match, one of the recent preseason matches, I believe Semenyo took it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, because Solanke left, who would be the main, like, penalty taker, right? And I guess that would be, like, a way to kind of rank how we eye up the assets for the next segment. But yeah, okay. I'm getting a little off track, getting too excited about some Bournemouth assets. So let's continue with some names. The final one that I want to touch on, one of two from last summer. Tyler Adams came in from Leeds. There was a lot of hype around him, but again, is one of those situations where he was just injured. Couldn't play. Couldn't get on the pitch.
And that's going to continue on for this season, I believe. He's injured again right now. It's my understanding. And it's a fairly long-term injury it's what I understand. He's had very bad luck with that, I have to admit. He did get on the pitch only maybe a half dozen times towards the end of the season, I believe. And there were some good signs there. I think he may have got a man of the match performance in one of those. Definitely seems like a big talent, but I don't know. It's unfortunate. It's looking like he's spending a lot of time, on the medical table there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he seems a class player for the US as well. So, I mean, hopefully he gets through his rehab and recovery as soon as possible.
Hope so.
So final name from last summer, Luis Sinistera. And we're going to touch on him a bit shortly, given the fact that he's now permanently a Bournemouth player. He also came in from Leeds, a very, very exciting Colombian forward.
Yep, that's a name we're going to be hearing a bit more throughout this episode. He's a player I do rate highly, performed very well in pre-season, and if you check his points out towards the end of last season, it kind of I was lost on it as well, but he did rather well towards the end of last season in terms of points there. If not finding the net, he would get points out of nowhere. If he was starting, he was getting relatively good points.
Yeah.
I would rank him right up there in terms of Bournemouth assets, either number one or number two.
Okay.
In terms of the average draft position, he's quite far down, which is a surprise to me. There's a lot of players above him, Clivert being one of them, Cook, Senesi, Christie, Tavernier. These guys are all above him. I would rank him higher than those guys, personally. I would expect him to have a bigger season.
I love to hear that because in a couple of my drafts recently, in like the final round, like I'm one of those managers, I don't like drafting a goalkeeper. I try to take as many outfielders as possible and then kind of wait until the game week's about to start and then make my changes given like presser infos, etc. I had actually grabbed Sinistera in a couple of draft leagues as my 16th round pick because I was keeping an eye on like the preseason friendlies as well, and I noticed that he notched 2 goals in his last 2 games as well. So I was like, listen, the man's clearly on form, and you basically hit the nail on the head. He scores a lot of Fantrax points when he plays as well. So yeah, I can't wait to touch on him a bit later. So looking back at last season's winter window, there's one name that definitely stands out for me as the in, which was a loan in from Getafe, Enes Unal.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he got a couple of late winners there, I believe. Yeah, he was mostly starting, mostly off the bench, but I would expect him again to have a bigger role today. He's a big guy. He's a very big guy, but also he's got some amount of skill in the way that he plays. I know Kiefer Moore is a player we said goodbye to. I feel like he's kind of fitting into that role. Maybe not the starting striker, but he's a good option, a good kind of plan B. You never know. He may become the starting striker at this point.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so into the current window, we've touched on Sinistera and Unal being permanent signings. So before we mention the other ins from this summer window, let's mention a couple of outs. So Lloyd Kelly was one that is very familiar with me. He's kind of followed Eddie Howe to Newcastle at the moment. And from what I understand, Lloyd is one of those very versatile utility sort of players that, you could stick anyone on the pitch and he will do a job.
Very dependable. I mean, he was the club captain as well. Super dependable guy. It's a shame to lose him. I would say that the depth at centre-back is not bad. I feel that there's 2 centre-backs in the team who I prefer over him. But that said, he still did start a lot of games last year. And I would expect him to start for Newcastle as well, at least some of the time. He's a big loss. Again, in terms of fantasy, I don't know that he was ever a great asset, but a leader, is gone, which can have an effect, tends to be an adverse effect on a team, right, when they leave.
Yeah, definitely. So we've already touched on Kiefer Moore leaving. There's a couple of other names like Ryan Fredericks, Emiliano Marcondes. But I mean, let's just jump straight to the point. The big transfer out. Dominic Solanke off to Tottenham Hotspur. Patrick, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings, man, as a fan?
It's very mixed. It's very mixed because it's been a bit of a roller coaster with him since he came in. He started relatively slowly at Bournemouth when he came in a few years back, and I keep getting grief from my fan Trax group because I gave him a lot of abuse when he came in because he couldn't hit a barn door. He was really shocking.
Yeah.
In the Premier League, I think he had like 1 or 2 goals for the whole season at first. And he came in for a relatively big fee. I remember him and Jordan Ibe. We got the 2 guys from Liverpool for quite a high fee. He really just developed amazingly well. I think 1 or 2 seasons in the Championship did wonders for him. And coaching, I think he's a player that really improved a lot just thanks to coaching, and seems very switched on, a very, very smart, intelligent player. And he's deserved the move. I mean, he got 19 goals last season, which is just insane in this kind of team. So I don't resent him for the move at all. I think he's earned it very much. It's very much on good terms as well. He signed a big long-term contract not long before the move as well. I believe it was earlier this year or perhaps at the end of last year, just so we could get a big fee. And what was it, 65 million or something like that, which is remarkable money for Bournemouth, even with money from outside being pumped in. I mean, that's a lot of money. In terms of who's going to replace him, as you said, there's the striker, Unal. He's still there. Yeah, he's still there. Semenyo is going to have to kind of pick up the slack a little bit with that. But I would be expecting some reinforcement. I would expect them to try to bring in a new signing. If I could bring up some of the names that are being kind of banded around.
Yeah, definitely.
As possible.
What have you been hearing?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of these are more gossipy. A couple of them that there have been bids put in. But Tammy Abraham is someone who I've seen links with. That's more of a gossipy one. I'm not sure if that's going to come to pass, but I don't mind the sound of that. Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal, obviously, is somebody who's been linked a little bit with it. I'm not too familiar with the player, but Ivan Ilsan from Porto is a striker there. Yeah. According to Fabrizio Romano, there's been an offer rebutted from them, so that's perhaps the most likely of them. Honestly, it's in the process of maybe going through now. Let's see how that goes. Cameron Archer from Villa, who I believe was on loan at Sheffield United. Not a player who I know a lot about, but I think he got 4 or 5 goals in the Premier League last year with in a terrible Sheffield United team. Yeah. And am I right, Sanchi? You're a Chelsea boy, right?
Yeah, I don't like telling people that these days, given the fact that we've become a bit of a banter club at the moment.
Right. It's delightful to see that. But I was going to say, if you look through your dozens and dozens of reinforcements and bench for the bench, and Broja is still there, is he not?
Yeah, he very much is.
Maybe a player I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe took a punt on him. That might be someone to look at in terms of Bournemouth.
Yeah, definitely. So other names before we move on from this segment that have also come into the club. I don't know if you can maybe quickly touch on them. Alex Paulson, is he some sort of backup goalkeeper at the moment?
I must confess I had to do my homework on him as well last night, but he's in from Wellington Phoenix.
Okay.
I believe he got the player of the season, the goalkeeper of the season in that league.
Okay.
Which I'm sorry, that's either Australia or New Zealand. It's one of them, isn't it? So he seems very promising. He in pre-season we've had Neto and Travers still rotating in goals, so I don't think he's going to get minutes. I believe they're trying to send him on loan, but there are some work permit issues or some issues, club ownership issues, I believe it is actually. So I wouldn't expect him to play any kind of role.
Okay. What about Daniel Jebison?
Yeah, very young striker, another player who got minutes, got a goal in pre-season. Yeah, he's in from Sheffield United as well. seems quite promising. His goal was the sweatiest of all the tap-ins. It was from a yard out. After Sinistera is good work, I believe.
Okay.
So that's an interesting one. He's young. I believe he's 19 or something like that. So I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes with him. If he gets on the pitch, that would be great. But I think there's players ahead of him in the pecking order as of now.
Okay. Another name, Kobe Moto. I don't know if I pronounced that right.
He hasn't come up in my homework, so I actually don't know who that is.
No worries. Okay, I think it's a 17-year-old academy prospect, so it's maybe one for dynasties. No worries. We can move on to
for
another
the future.
name. Yeah. Julian Araujo from Barcelona. That's a fairly popular name, I would say.
Right. Okay. So that's the guy who came in yesterday, right? That was very timely.
Because it was one of those players that when I try to look up, I was getting an error page on Bournemouth's homepage, so I don't know if they've properly released the article and stuff like that. So that must be a very, very, very fresh one. So then let's move on to the final one, which is a name that has come up in a few football chats given the recent injury to Senesi, Dean Huijsen.
Had to look up the pronunciation of it. Yeah, I believe it's Housen is what I came up with. Yeah, he's coming in from Juventus, 19-year-old, quite a highly rated player. He was on loan at Roma last season, got 13 appearances and a couple of goals in there as well. Yeah. I think he might fit in that Lloyd Kelly spot, if not the starting centre-back, because there's Zabani and Senesi, but I think he could be the go-to option there for depth in terms of that. But he seems very, very promising. Young, but ready to play. 13 games for Roma is nothing to sniff at his age. Yeah. So could be one to watch out for.
Okay, awesome. Are there any other names you want to touch on before we can maybe remind listeners of, what the system used to look like last season and then, what it could be next season?
No, I think that's pretty much it. That Julian Araujo coming in from Barca, he's an interesting one. As far as I can see, he didn't make any appearances for Barca, but he came in from LA Galaxy a couple of years ago, and he was on loan at Las Palmas last year. Got a number of appearances there. I believe he's Mexico's right back. He's in the national team for Mexico, so he's getting a lot of experience. I know that the play can be quite rough in those international matches. So maybe we mentioned Adam Smith and Max Aarons earlier on. Maybe pushing for the starting position there. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to get a hold of attacking numbers. Not really the kind of assist-getting defender, but hopefully that changes.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully it does. So, looking back at last season, what would you say or how would you describe the system or philosophy that you guys played under Iraola?
Football was quite beautiful, wasn't it? I think conceding a number of goals, not that that's built into the philosophy there, but I think there's an element of risk with things. They didn't really play it safe. I think they always push for another goal. Try to get the goals up there. I think it's a fairly attractive type of football. It's very easy on the eye. I would expect more of the same.
Okay, fair enough. So in terms of the expected formation and starting 11, what are you predicting for at least the start of the campaign?
Right. So I guess starting from the back, the goalkeeper is a little bit of an interesting one. Neto, who I was quite fond of a couple of years back, he has become a little bit more error prone in recent times. Travers was out on loan, and I thought we'd kind of seen the last of Travers, but he seems to be back. He's been playing in pre-season, so unless something's a surprise there, I wouldn't be surprised if Travers took the number one starting goalkeeping spot there, which could be interesting. Neto was always good for like the occasional clean sheet. Desperately making saves to hang on to the clean sheet. He was pretty good for that. In terms of defence, I would be looking at maybe Araujo or Aarons at right back, possibly Smith as well, getting starts there. Zabani and Senesi at centre back with Housen as well, doing something there. Left back, Kirkes is just going to be a mainstay in the team. He's going to be in there all the time. Moving on from there, I'd like to see Alex Scott nailing down that position there. Adam Cook also.
Yeah, Lewis Cook.
Lewis Cook is the one. Yeah. He seems to be very popular with a manager. Does relatively well in terms of fantasy as well.
He's good
someone
ghost
who I've
point scorer.
seen.
Yeah. We call him the chef in our Discord.
Okay. Okay. I was going to ask why, but then it became very apparent in my mind.
Classic dad joke.
Okay. I appreciate it. Christie as well. He's dropped a lot deeper in the team. He used to be more towards the forward line, but drops a little bit deeper now. Don't really rate him in terms of fantasy football, but he'll play, I would expect. In terms of the front line, obviously there's that big gap now. So I think Sinisterra is gonna have a spot nailed down. Kluivert in and out of the team, but Semenyo will be in there for sure. And it's just that striking position, isn't it? It's a matter of who gets in there. I don't know about Jebison. I feel like it might be a little bit too soon for him. He might be the type of player to come off the bench. Unal, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of him this season, so not a bad option. I think Unal could be someone to consider. Tavernier is always kind of there and thereabouts. Yeah, I think something like that.
Yeah. So I suspect then you guys are probably gonna stick with like that 4-2-3-1 formation then, just because it's what the players were accustomed to last season. I wouldn't expect Iraola to change anything massively. It's surprising that you're not that high on Ryan Christie, because like in the default vision of the game, I mean obviously Solanke left, so when you look at like the Bournemouth data right now on Fantrax, he still was the top scoring or second top scoring asset, whichever way you want to look at it, from last season, averaging just under 9 points per game. Are you not expecting him to have that much of a standout season again? Because it was definitely, I would say, a bit of a one-off, right? I don't think many Fantrax managers were expecting him to do this well. But yeah, what are your expectations from Ryan Christie then for next season?
That's interesting. It's interesting to hear. I never did have him. I suppose another player in our league must have had him throughout the season, and I just ignored the points he was getting. I tend to look at the points of the players in the waivers bin
right.
But okay, well that's a surprise. He doesn't get goals or assists. I would say I don't know that he did score last season, did he?
I would say he did. So if I was to pull it up, give me 1 second.
If he did, it would be one. I mean, it's not many.
Yeah,
it's not many.
So from last season, he would have gotten 0 goals and 5 assists. So I mean, you were kind of right in a sense. So he used to get a lot of ghost points, basically, right? Because if you look at like the key pass leader, I believe it might have been Ryan Christie with 55. So he was kind of like very much in and about that midfield, right? I do believe he was like one of the top tacklers for the team as well. So he was just kind of ticking along, right? And every now and then he'd get an attacking return. I would say maybe he was like a mid 3, realistically more mid 4 sort of thing. So yeah, I guess you're right in that sense. You're not really depending on him for attacking returns. That's a bonus if anything, right?
That's true. And he's going to be in the starting lineup every week as well, which is always good. It's always a nice thing.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So then, is there anything else you want to touch on for this segment, or shall we move on to the next one?
No, I think I'm okay. There's one player who we didn't really mention too much, who's the guy who was on loan at was it Lorient last year? Is it Favre?
Yes, Favre. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got that number 8 shirt on his back, which is always quite an attractive one. I mean, I like the football that number 8s play.
Yeah.
I'm curious. He's a bit of a curveball, just to see what he does this season, if anything.
Okay, interesting.
We'll see.
Yeah, let's see what you have in store for us then. All right, so let's move on to our next segment, which is the Fantrax side of things. All right, Patrick, who is your first pick from Bournemouth?
Oh, yeah. As much as I'd like to make a controversial choice, it's got to be Semenyo, I think, at number 1. It's hard to look past him. Obviously, Solanke, I think, went in our league round kind of 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4, somewhere.
Round 3, yeah.
Round about there. It's interesting to consider whether his value drops or gets better at Tottenham. I think there's kind of arguments to be made either side of that. But in terms of Bournemouth, I think you've got to go Semenyo there.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And which round would you be taking Semenyo then?
Yeah, don't remember when he went in our league, but it was a little bit later than that. It was probably towards round 4 or 5. He did well. He did well for Bournemouth last year. I could see that continuing. I do remember he's one of the players I sledged and slated in our preview last year. I said he's dead. He's going to be gone quick.
Yeah.
We're going to sell him, and then he was outstanding throughout the year.
I remember you mentioning that on the individual recording that we did during the international break as well. Yeah, you were like, he made me eat my words, but it is what it is. So I think given the fact that, Solanke transfer would have happened, I think, before when you drafted, right? So, assuming Solanke was still at Bournemouth, I think Semenyo might have been going, let's say, in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round in like other drafts. Yeah. And I think that's because like people wouldn't have expected him to be the main man moving forward for Bournemouth, right? And obviously things will change. I expect that number to move up in a sense as managers finish their drafts before the start of the season on Friday. So all right, that's very interesting. So in terms of your next 3 picks from Bournemouth, who have you got and which rounds would you suggest taking them?
Yeah, that's a good one. I was just looking back at Semenyo. Yeah, actually in our league he went in round 9.
Okay.
If you were to do a draft today, it would probably be a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, I think so as well.
So when he went initially.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one, that, because I was looking at average draft position. You've got Tavernier at 101, Christie 112.
Yeah.
Senesi 125, which I think is too high for Senesi. He's a great player in real life, but in fantasy it just doesn't translate to that, in my opinion. Cook is there as well, Clive. However, he's way down there in the average draft position, but Sinisterra, I would be strongly kind of pushing him there for the second pick.
Yeah.
So you've got Semenyo there. Sinisterra second, I'm not sure. I don't know if I could put a number on it, but one of the later rounds, if you could probably get away with picking him to be on your subs bench, maybe around 11 or 12, 13. I think you could, if he's still free, he's definitely worth a punt in my opinion. Other than that, I mean, if I had to pick another one, as you said, I think you made a good argument for Christie there. I think Christie is perhaps worth getting there. Scott as well. It's just if he can get on the pitch, right? Alex Scott, if he gets on the pitch, then I would have confidence that he could do something special.
Yeah.
But I think there's not a whole lot of Bournemouth assets that you absolutely must get.
Yeah.
Kind of play it week by week, play it by ear, and see who's in their lineup, see who they're facing, especially.
Yeah.
That's they're gonna decide a lot of things.
Did you by any chance roster Senesi last season?
Senesi, I did not. No, I think what was his average points? Was 4 or 5?
No, actually, he was on the better end of scoring. I would say he was averaging around 8.5 to 9 points. I asked that because you had a similar reaction to Christie as well. Because I would say Senesi was actually one of the more popular Bournemouth defensive assets. He had a couple attacking returns in him every now and then. I would say on the better end of the Bournemouth defenders, if you were willing to roster one as well. So he's I would say managers this season have been trying to roster him as like a defender 2 sort of asset. So the thing is though, I am a little skeptical whether or not he's going to be able to maintain this form going into next season. The reason being is that I feel like when a team loses their main player, their talisman, there is a bit of a drop-off. And I know obviously Solanke is there from an attacking perspective, but I feel like the entire dynamic of the team also changes from a defensive perspective as well, right? So that's why I'm a little more hesitant on Senesi. So I kind of agree with you in that sense. Like, I'm skeptical, regardless of whatever points that he had scored last season. All right. In terms of like a hidden gem, have you got anything up your sleeve?
Yeah, I should have nailed down the pronunciation there before I picked him, but again, Favre. I'm going to go with Favre.
Let's go with Favre. Yeah. Or Romain.
yeah. Romain. Yeah, let's say that. Yeah, I'm curious about him. I know he the goal, I believe it was Jebuson's goal in pre-season. There was a nice little kind of dribble he did, went past a couple of players and put a through ball through, and I believe Sinisterra squared for Jebuson. I don't know that he's going to start, but he seems very silky, quite a silky and talented young player. it's a little bit strange last year. He was obviously on. We signed him and then we sent him back to his club on loan for a year. So he really hasn't had a real chance at Bournemouth yet. But this will be his first full season, as far as I know. Perhaps one to keep an eye on. Again, I can't guarantee that, but it's a gamble. It's a gamble.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's going to be exciting to see how Herrera kind of manages the squad. Again, alluding to not having his talisman, right, and how he adapts to the Premier League next season. All right. In terms of a trap asset, then, who have you got up your sleeve?
So define a trap asset for me, Sanji.
So I would say a trap asset would be someone that a lot of Fantrax managers are maybe drafting a bit too high, and maybe they're expecting too many points from them, right? So for me, maybe I would throw, and I don't know if this is like an absolute, shit guess, but maybe Tavernier?
Yeah, he's one that I was looking at there. Yeah, he's... tends to score the odd screamer, the odd absolute blinder.
It's the injuries for me.
He's injured quite a lot, and he blows hot and cold. He has off games for sure, but he's the kind of player that can take the game by the scruff of the neck and really drive the team on. That said, I wouldn't necessarily have him on my roster, to be honest, unless injuries goes that way. I'll say he's a trap. He's my trap.
Yeah. And I think another possible trap may be Kluivert.
Yeah. Again, I don't know that he scores well if you take out his goals and assists there. I don't know if he was a big assister, but he got a few goals. If you take those away, I don't know that he would score super well. So I think that's a fair judgment. Yeah.
So Kluivert ended up getting 7 goals and only 1 assist. So,
right. That's disappointing. You'd want more from him.
Exactly, yeah. And there's one other name I do want to touch on. I know we didn't kind of mention him in any of these segments, was Dango Ouattara. I honestly love him as an asset and how versatile of a player he was, because I think last season, before he went off for AFCON, he got stuck in that left back role, and regardless of him not playing up top, he was still scoring points for Fantrax managers, right? Is there any sort of expectation around him as an asset for next season?
I like him a lot as well. Yeah, he was getting minutes towards the end of the season as well. He seemed to come back into the manager's plans, which was good to see. I don't know, is he listed as a forward, midfielder?
He's actually listed as a midfielder this season.
Yeah. So it would be nice to have him in the defence there, just to get some defensive, maybe clean sheet points there. That would be great.
Yeah.
I do like him a lot. I think he's a very accomplished player. You never know. Yeah, he may be the backup. He's probably seen as the backup to Kerkez at left back, right?
Yeah, could be. Yeah,
but he can easily move into the midfield there.
Yeah, R.I.P. Billing, man. From being such a fantasy darling to not even being a main part of the team, it's crazy to see how ruthless football can be at times, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, he's still at the team, though, isn't he? And I have a very strong attachment to Billing, because he, my son, who's now 8 years old, his first Bournemouth kit has Billing on the back, which is kind of a concern, because he is the only player I've ever seen who has changed his name. He's like, I'm no longer known as Bill, and call me Philip. So now he's got Philip on the back of his shirt. So I chose the one player who decided to make that kind of statement, which is a concern. But I don't know. It is. I'm surprised to see that he's still at the club. I feel like he needs a move for himself. Again, I do really rate his skill set quite highly, and I think it was shit that he didn't go to the Euros. Honestly, I think for Denmark, he would have been great for them. It's a shame that didn't happen, but I don't know. Maybe the resurgence of Billing. Maybe he's gonna, the resurrection of Billing. He might get another chance this year. You never know. Yeah,
hopefully we can be pleasantly surprised. Yeah. Awesome. So are there any other assets you want to touch on, or should we move on to our final segment?
I think you covered them all, man. Yeah, all right. We'll move on.
Awesome. Okay, time to pick your brain as an experienced Fantrax manager, Patrick. So first question up. Do you have a drafting day tradition? Do you need to be wearing a Bournemouth kit, maybe eating some cherries? Like, what's the deal?
I'll have to try that next year. I'll have to do that. But No, we get in a big Discord group and we talk that way. I say talk. I feel the heat a lot on draft day, and I go on mute. When other players are picking, I'm definitely throwing little jibes, throwing little digs at people. But I'm more of a kind of on mute type of guy with that. I definitely feel the heat. I don't know. No, my thing is no alcohol at that time. I'm definitely on the tap waters that time. Yeah, tap water. You gotta keep focused, or you're gonna make bad decisions. So this is a serious business. So
very good advice, man. Especially for like new Fantrax managers that are maybe really nervous. Take a drink to take the edge off. Yeah, it's probably not the best thing.
No.
In terms of how you make your picks during the draft, are you a vibes manager, or have you got like an Excel sheet with like different colors and rankings?
I've gotten this far with no Excel sheets, honestly, but I find I do make a list just inside the application ahead of time. I tend to do that. But I also find that just the players, they kind of rank. If you look at the automatic draft position, it's relatively on point. Occasionally, I'll skip past whoever's at the top and I'll kind of pick someone a little bit lower down. But I don't think it's bad. Like, I think whoever's listed highly in the automatic draft positions there is relatively kind of close to who you should be getting. No Excel sheets for me. I think you guys are perverts who do that.
All right. Next question is.
Sorry, that's your whole community, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't care. I will definitely make fun of them as well. They know we love them. All right, they know we love them. So next question is trading draft picks. Do you have an experience with this?
I think I mentioned last time, I'm very trade averse and kind of risk averse. I've had quite a lot of trade offers sent my way. And it tends to be, I see that I don't really get the trade offers from the lesser managers. I get a lot of trade offers from people already at the top. I guess they're just looking to cement their position and kind of make the most of that. It tends to be, I receive a lot of offers that are multiplayer trades. Like, if you give me this guy and this guy and this guy, then I'll give you this guy, this guy, this guy. I don't know. I would... Can I recommend that people don't go nuts in trades? I mean,
yeah, definitely. If it's not your style, it's not your style. Yeah,
people will try to scam you. They'll try to get one over on you for sure. So unless you're going to be the big dog and try to scam people, I don't know. I would. I think there is still value. There's always value in the bin. Is my way of thinking. I tend to just let the waivers pass and then look through at my own pace. Look at who's available in the waivers bin, and then just in the free agents bin, and just pick up couple of guys from there. That tends to work okay.
Yeah, that's totally fair, because I'm not a massive trader myself as well. I'm the same way. I think you can always find an option on the waiver wire or a free agent. Even if you miss the waiver wire, you can easily grab a free agent if your league is structured that way as well, right? And chances are, like, I feel like every time, there's a game week that goes by, you look at, at the end of the game week, you look in the free agency pool, and you're always seeing a top scoring asset. And it's like, why didn't I pick him? Like, come on, man. Like, I've got, a couple assets in my team that don't even, the sum of their points don't even get to like half of the score that you see in the free agency pool, right? So yeah, I completely agree. There's always value there. So I'm guessing you didn't trade anything last season then?
Not that I can remember. I don't think I did,
Okay, that's totally fair. So do you have any experience using Fab?
So in terms of putting bids in
the budget,
players?
yeah. So does your league have a budget that you guys
we're
get
on
allocated?
300, yeah, we do 300.
So how do you typically spend that? Do you just splurge all of it on a shiny new toy, or do you try to spread it out throughout the entire season?
Yeah, I think last season I tried to spread it out and it worked relatively well. In fact, I think I still had money left over at the end of the season, which was kind of weird. But I know I got burnt a little bit in the past. I say burnt. I remember going super high on James Rodriguez when he came in at Everton.
Yeah.
It wasn't 300, but it was close to that. It was quite a lot, and started off very well. Didn't end up working out super well.
Yeah.
Recently, I've just been. In fact, I got Sinistera for I think one. I dropped someone from my team and got Sinistera in there. I would kind of bid quite low, be very conservative at the beginning. There are still going to be signings made. If you look at Bournemouth just speaking for Bournemouth specifically, but they're going to bring in a striker. There's still a couple of weeks left of the window at least. Does it close at the end of August? Is it?
Is it September? Let me just check. Actually,
maybe.
Summer window deadline EPL. So it closes Friday, August 30th, I believe. Oh, so there you go, spot on.
A couple of weeks, yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if they brought in a relatively big striker who would be expected to start. So perhaps look out for that.
Okay, awesome. So next question. In terms of your waiver picks that you make, your FA claims, do you look at like the form of the player? Do you look at upcoming fixtures? Like, what's your rationale behind choosing your assets?
Recent form is a big one, and if they're getting 90 minutes on the pitch, I think that always helps as well. I tend to just look at the last 7 days or 14 days of performances and see how they're doing there. Again, that doesn't always work. It doesn't always work out super well, but it tends to, sometimes it can be a winner. Definitely consider who they're playing. Yeah, look at which fixture is coming up. Not necessarily gonna get a whole lot out of City or Arsenal, but if you're facing someone else, United, for example, then you might have a chance.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So before we move on from Bournemouth completely, given the start of your season, so you're away to Forest, then home to Newcastle, away to Everton, home to Chelsea, and away to Liverpool. Not the easiest of starts, I want to say, but after that, then you've got Southampton at home, Leicester away, and those are the sort of opponents that I think you can get points against easily. So I'm just wondering, in terms of maybe buying low on some Bournemouth assets or selling high, are there any names that kind of stand out to you? So, like, for example, given like the difficult start that you have, maybe you guys struggle in the first few games and, Sinistera is kind of grabbed by someone after listening to our conversation, right? He doesn't start very well. That's the sort of asset I think I would be buying low into, right? Is there
I'm with you.
Is there anyone else that you think kind of falls into that category?
Yes, Sinistera was going to be my go-to on that. I think he's definitely one to look out on that. I mean, yeah, you look at Semenyo as well. You never know. I could see people. There's a lot of players out there. You could end up dropping Semenyo, and if there's any chance of getting him, I can't see him not being in the team.
Yeah.
Even if he starts slowly, he's likely to pick up. When we're playing Southampton, the South Coast Derby, I think that kind of match he'll definitely take control in. If there's any chance of getting him, consider doing that.
Okay, awesome. All right. So that brings us to the final question of the podcast. So being an experienced manager, what are some of the lessons you have learned over the past few seasons that you're taking into the upcoming campaign that you think will bring you more success?
Yeah, the league leader, the league commissioner loves to say, trust me, this deal is going to benefit you as much as it benefits me. It tends not to work out like that. So be very cautious with your commissioners. Just in general, I feel like is a Trax rule. And keep an eye on the waivers bin. Look at recent form. Look at try to find trends that are going on there. If someone, for example, they don't get great points when they're off the bench, but when they start, they get good points. Just keep an eye on that, and just stay on it. I mean, make your subs. I live in Japan, so there's a lot of waking up in the wee hours, but it does make a difference. Even just a couple of points here and there can push you over to get over the line to get a couple of wins, which could. Could be enough to get you the league title. You never know. Stay on ball. Stay on top of things with subs.
Love it. All right, awesome. So, listeners, that's all we had planned for tonight's pod. Before we sign off, Patrick, do you have any final words you would like to share with the listeners?
Best of luck, everyone. In terms of Bournemouth assets, I think I said earlier on I didn't have any of them in there. Sinistera, I did get him in. Not long after the draft itself. I'm putting a lot of my kind of expectations on him this year. I feel like it could be a big season for him. Consider investing in him and up the cherries.
All right. Awesome. Listeners, we've only got one more club to cover. I cannot believe we're finally at the end of this wonderful journey. Thank you to everyone that has come on, represented their club, listen to every second or minute of the series that we've been doing. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with all our friends of the community. Friends all over the world as well, right? Alluding to you, Patrick. Thank you so much again for the effort, for the time. Yeah. I can't wait to get the season started, really. I'm just buzzing for that. So until next time, listeners, peace.